So we find the door we want to put in the opening. First thing to note is that when putting a door against the wall, we want to make sure that it is square against the wall, as the door will stay flat. They're usually clearly marked. That's the goal. We got a 4 9/16 wide door jamb and it's 2870. So we got a 2870 door here that Mike's gonna install. So first thing, double check the height of the door and the width of the door.
As well as the rough opening.
As well as the rough opening. Make sure it's the right door and it's gonna fit with a margin to adjust for out of level and out of plumb. Next thing Mike has done is measured off the floor to some control lines so he knows if the floor is level or not. To this control line he has 58 inches. This level control line he has 58 1/8. Just with that information, we know that Mike needs to remove 1/8 of an inch off the bottom of the left-hand door jamb to accommodate for a floor that is out of level 1/8 of an inch. Cut. So Mike's got a square in his cordless drill, and he's going to lay the door down so that he can cut off 1/8 of an inch off the jamb. So we got the door on its side. You notice a couple shipping staples he's going to remove. Before we laid it flat, we made sure that the pin was securely in the door so that the door will stay closed in the closed position. Marking 1/8 of an inch on the door.
Get it accurate.
Burning 1 inch, all right. So Mike figured out we needed to cut 1/8 of an inch off the bottom of this door without ever setting the door in the opening. Before setting the door in the opening, Mike's installed these corner braces just to allow him to set the door thoroughly. The nails he used was a 16 or 15 gauge nail going into the stud, about 2 inches long of a nail, to make sure that these blocks hold the whole process. If they do fall out as you're installing the door, it will push the door through. So Mike's going to raise the door up.
We'll set it up against the wall.
So Mike has marked the hinge location of the door, and he's sanded it with a 5-in-1 tool. He's scraped the sheetrock flush so our shim can go all the way through and be equal from both sides. And then he's marked it on the other side as well because he likes to put the shim at the same location on both sides. And here he's gonna scrape this side. So he wants to put some shims there. He needs to get rid of the sheetrock so the shim will sit on there. Now that is ready for a shim. It comes in, pushes the door up against the blocks, and he's going to check the control line, center it up in the opening, and then he can do some shimming. So as you can see, Mike's stuck on the other side of the door, but on this side of the door has to be centered on this space. So he's already planned and accommodated where he's going to put a larger shim on what is our right-hand side of the door. So when the 5-inch casing goes on the door, there'll be an equal space from there to the wall as there is on the left-hand side from there to the wall. And that's critical on this side. On the side Mike's on, it's not so important because it's just a big wall. So using some scraps we have around the job site, we're going to also put a block in at the bottom as we install this door. We feel pretty critical to install the door from this side, as the reveal can be made as good as possible, where you're only talking about an 1/8 of an inch tolerance. It's really difficult to have that tolerant and then whatever it is at the top be very consistent from the back side of the door. So the manufacturers put this plug in there for shipping purposes, but we do want to not take for granted that this reveal isn't exact. So we need to remove this now to install the door, but also keeping in mind it wasn't in the exact proper location to begin with. Probably about a 1/16 out, the best I can tell from this angle.
A hair.
Right, just a hair on the framing.
Needs to come out just a little bit.
All right.
4 inches. 4 1/4. 4 3/8. 4 3/8.
So we've determined Mike's going to put a 1/4 inch shim at that corner closest to that hinge, and that will center the door on his side. That line marks the center of the hinge. He's got 2 shims back to back that equal a 1/4. Since he's got the shim in the top, we want to shim it for plumb. So he's going to put, as if that door jam's in there at the hinge location at the bottom, he's going to put a shim at the bottom. So now we have 4 corners of wood that is going to hold the outside of this door flush with the sheetrock on Mike's side. And now we have 3 shims that are plumb on the inside as well. So now Mike's ready to remove the pin that is for shipping. And the door is going to become out of square at this point. We'll keep some pressure on it so the door doesn't just fall. Sometimes there's nails in these, and sometimes you got this little pin. Good. So you can see the door's racked real bad. Having the nail gun on his tool belt. Squeeze your finger through the holes, keep it solid. We'll place that in the opening. He's put some pressure on the blocks that he's installed, and he's this moment focused on making it tight at the top. So he's going to put a shim there to sort of jam the door into the opening temporarily. So that way the door will just kind of stay as he takes a couple dimension checks. So after getting the door in the opening, Mike's got a shim up at the top of the door. He's double checked to make sure that reveal at the top is good. And the door is touching the floor. The jamb is touching the floor on both sides. And we've got our 3 shims in touching the hinges. And so now the reason we've got the shim at the top is just to keep the door from falling out as he opens it to set some nails. So he's going to tack it at the hinge locations on the hinge side of the door. Go ahead and do that. So he's carefully opening the door, giving it some weight. So once you've got a couple tacks in there, just to hold the door in there. So now we can focus on the reveal. So after the tacking, you shut the door, just double check the reveal. And you got a nice consistent reveal at the start where that first nail was. Got a nice reveal across the top. This reveal hasn't changed either. If you put too much shim on that side at the top, this can often get bigger and then bow into the normal reveal right by the hinge. I'm kind of looking down. This is a well-made door. Very consistent reveal all the way to the floor. This sometimes can grow and shrink at the bottom. So you may need a shim or a tack at the bottom, depending, just to make sure that works out as well. So opening the door, he's going to put some shims in the locations that we marked and scooped out the sheetrock. A little bit from both sides.
It's just a control.
Just one nail for now to hold the thing together. So as you go down the door, you check the reveal as you're adding these shims with just one nail. It's actually adding a shim to the jam so that the reveal is good. Then he's going to add a shim from this side at the bottom.
And this stud is twisted. Be careful.
The stud's twisted, so he's going to add a little bit more to one side of the door than the other. Keeping in mind that reveal is critical. So you got a nice reveal, you got a tight shim. You open the door up, hold that shim in place, take your nail, and again, you're just tacking it for 2.5 inch, 16 gauge nail. It's not gonna hold it permanent, but it'll hold it long enough for you to get the door swinging.
It's a little tight on the
A
bottom.
little tight on the bottom, we can do some adjustment to that. Now these are a fixed stop door, so we're gonna check the other side to see how, with the sheetrock flush, because of our board on the other side, we're gonna see how well the door is actually touching the stop. So coming inside the room that's closed off, we just look to see how well the door is touching the stop at the top, and in this case at the bottom, and it's perfect. But if it wasn't, we'd want to move the jam. We'd want to do some adjustment. If there was a gap right here, we'd want to move the jam away at the top or push it in at the bottom. It would kind of give us grief when we go to case the door, but it's more important that that stop touches consistently.
I prefer 3 to 4 nails.
So Mike's pretty confident in his location of the door. We got a fixed stop. We're able to put 3 or 4 nails into every hinge. So now that Mike's got this side of the jam nailed off, he's going to take off the hinges carefully. And he's going to put one at a time. He's going to take the hinge off and put a screw behind the hinge so that in the event that the door becomes out of adjustment, he can get
These two in the center.
Mm-hmm.
Slight angle.
So pre-drill the jam at a slight angle back towards the stud. You don't want to put it at the front of the hinge where you probably end up at sheetrock. You want to put it in between those two holes, the back, where you're going to hit a stud. So we're going to do that to every hinge so that we're assured that these shims are held true, and it gives us a chance to adjust them in the future if needed. Using a 3-inch screw for that, square drive. So we put the hinge back together, carefully not to strip out the screw. Sometimes they're brass. Mike likes to put the clutch on the setting number 8 as to not over tighten the screw and strip out the threads. So the noise you're hearing is not the stripping of the screw, but the clutch. It's not an impact driver that he's using either. So you can see Mike put the shims, he laid them out centered of the stud. So that screw that we just put in is going right through the middle of the shim. He's got a nice big countersink bit, 3/16, number 10 countersink. Right through the middle of the shim. He's basically put a hole all the way through into the 2x4 that makes for easy driving of a 3-inch screw. So after screwing that side of the jam, you just kind of double check the reveals on the hinge side. Make sure you're satisfied with the reveal all the way down. Mike likes to put a shim down at the very bottom there towards the end of the process. That's the reveal. Going with 4 nails. So that reveal is getting a little snug at the bottom, and we figure when we install the casing and then the baseboard, there's a chance that that could get even tighter. So we're going to put a little bit of pressure on that jam. So we can get some adjustment out of that door just by putting a shim in there. So we're going to put a little shim, got a little sheetrock buildup on the other side we hadn't cleaned out before. I'm just going to clean that out a little bit. So talking and thinking about this reveal, trying to get it right across the top, has paid off for a successful door installation. Now we're going to cut the shims off. So Mike set this door with screws behind the hinges, screws on the jam side. He's checked the hole to make sure it lines up with the strike, because if it doesn't, you want to make the builder aware of the manufacturer error. And in this one it does. And then he takes a sharp utility knife and he runs down the shim, trying to get through almost the whole shim before breaking it off, because you can actually torque the jam a little bit more than you want to when you're doing the shims. Yeah, the screws really add to the installation process. The screws do, and the shims here that he's taken off are. It's critical that you don't torque the door around too much as you're taking these off. This door should be set, and there won't be any surprises later on.
Taking the shims off, make sure you take them back to the furthest point that you can. So that when that person, if it's not you who does casing, doesn't have to do it.
You want that shim cut off behind flush. You don't want your casing to end up being held off of the jam because of a shim. And the way he's breaking it is towards the cut. He's not breaking it on the other direction, which is likely to leave a big splinter of wood. But even a fat shim like that, you score it a couple times and then break it off towards your score, you're going to leave the shim behind flush.
You know your casing covers a lot of that. You still have to be careful not to.
You don't want to torque the jam, and on this side we can't really get the utility knife on the other side of the jam. So we are having to leave it, but as you go, just make sure that the shim's cut off flush or behind flush. Some guys like to use a multi-tool for this process, but you can scar the jam pretty badly with a multi-tool. Might be fine to use, but I don't know that it's any faster. I think this is about the best process. Tack those nails up.
Careful not to You know, it's a sheetrock outside the casing, and don't use the jam as a lever.
Putting his hammer behind where the casing will go as to not damage the sheetrock. And there's a nail that, probably hit another nail and crumpled up. So it's kind of hard with a nail that size. It's almost as big as that screw hole right there if you were to just set that in. So carefully trying to break it off, pull it out. Try to get the nail to be set flush without damaging the jam too badly is the key. So he's basically just broke the nail off and solved the problem.
Yep.
The sign of a good craftsman is finishing the job. As you can see, there's a fair amount of trash that's created when you hang a door. Just making sure we clean up well, leave it a good, pleasant job site for a successful installation. And in this case, we didn't shim the top of the jam or the header, or maybe a bi-hinge door. You definitely want to shim the top where the ball catches would go. Mike likes to put a few nails in the top without a shim, but just for the heck of it.
Yeah, you don't have any force coming down on that, so.
Right? Makes a lot of sense. Mike likes to use a 5-gallon bucket with his tools in there. Couple levels, couple drills, toolbox, cordless circular saw.
I think the way you install a door, how you install it, it's just not the installation, it's what happens after the installation. If you're confident and you use the method that we just described, it will save us money down the road for coming back and adjusting 4 doors, coming back a month later and adjusting 4 doors. Typically, if you set doors like this, you're going to come back and have 1 to 2 minor adjustments, and it's going to take you 10 minutes and you're out the door and everyone's happy. As opposed to taking a total of 10 hours.
All right, good job, good job.